everybody. Welcome to our famous cotton club. If you can spare a minute from your merrymaking, I'd like to have the pleasure of introducing the greatest living master of jungle music, the rip-roaring harmony hound, none other than Duke Ellington. Take your bow, Duke.
All right, you guys, if you will, please title your notes, Harlem Renaissance. Harlem Renaissance. Your essential question for today: what was the Harlem Renaissance? What impact did it have on African Americans and the African American culture? Just a quick reminder, on the left side of your Cornell notes, you're going to write the title of the slides, any questions that may come up, and vocabulary terms. On the right side of your Cornell notes, you're going to write what is essential for you to answer that EQ, definitions, and answers to any questions throughout the PowerPoint. All right, so once again, title your notes, Harlem Renaissance. The essential question: what was the Harlem Renaissance? What impact did it have on African Americans and on the African American culture? All right, your Harlem Renaissance, this is the blossoming of African American culture. This is the rebirth of different literatures, science, and arts, but this rebirth is not going to be with the Anglo or white American point of view or even European. Instead, its central focus is going to be on African Americans. This is going to be the time where African Americans, specifically in the North and more specifically in Harlem, New York, are going to reconquer their culture, their thoughts, and their feelings, and they're going to put it into those arts, science, and literature, and they're also going to have a huge impact on politics. All right, so some of the characteristics of the Harlem Renaissance, once again, that cultural movement, where we are going to celebrate the African heritage and the newfound culture of African Americans after Reconstruction. This is also around the time of the Freedmen's Bureau. This celebration is going to be done through novels, through poetry, paintings, sculptures, and through music. African Americans are going to be given the platform and the opportunity in Harlem, New York. It's going to start in the 20s. And this time period is just going to be blossoming and blooming for the African American culture. All right, so one of the reasons why this starts in Harlem, you guys, Harlem becomes this overbuilt area that was supposed to be an all-white neighborhood. However, they built it up so much that once the Great Migration happened and African Americans started moving from the South to the North, they had no choice but to offer Harlem the opportunity to have African Americans establish themselves in that particular area as well. So with the Great Migration happening from 1915, it starts before then, but during the 1915s and 1920s is when you have this huge increase in the Black population coming to Harlem, not just from the South, but you also have people from the West Indies coming in as well. You guys, the West Indies are the islands, okay? You also have an increase in confidence because we've now developed the NAACP, because of W.E.B. Du Bois. You also have National Urban League. You have the Association of the Study of Negro Life and History. You have people like Booker T. Washington who were pushing for African Americans to have their own and not just waiting for things to be handed to them by white America. So the Harlem Renaissance is really going to be this time period where African Americans take hold of their lives, take hold of their culture, and they start to celebrate it instead of being down and sad about it, okay? This is a time where Black excellence is on the rise, and we are celebrating it in every way possible. The themes that are going to happen during the Harlem Renaissance are racial affirmation, simply being excited and happy about your color and your ethnicity. There's going to be a rejection of blackface. If you guys remember, like Jump Jim Crow, where white people were painting their face in black. and talking Negro-ish, this is going to be heavily rejected. They're not going to entertain those minstrels. They're not going to entertain those people. You also have radical racial protests where African Americans are starting to speak up about the injustice that's going on. You have a celebration of Christianity and religion and how it impacts the Black household. You have literature, people like Zora Neale Hurston, people like Langston Hughes, who are writing about the Black experience from both positive and negative points of views. You have jazz and music, and then you have this overall essence and feeling of just being excellent and powerful in your Blackness and your color. Literacy is going to be a big thing, literature and writing. So a lot of those figures are going to come from the Federal Writers Project. This was a government-funded project that gave writers, not just African American, but all writers, a platform. It paid them to write about what was going on during these times. And some of those African American writers are going to end up being Margaret Walker, Ralph Ellison, and Zora Neale Hurston. If you've never read Zora Neale Hurston, phenomenal writer. I highly suggest that you go and read Zora Neale Hurston. Okay. On top of that, you also get James Weldon Johnson, Count Cullen, and Langston Hughes. And hopefully you guys all know about Langston Hughes and his poetry. He's got beautiful works just as well as Langston Hughes, just as well as Zora Neale Hurston, okay? Jazz music is going to be booming during this time, you guys. Jazz is going to come from that culture of African kingdoms. It's going to come from slavery as well, and it's going to be upbeat, and it just becomes extremely popular as the Harlem Renaissance grows. And the popularity of that is going to increase with Harlem rent parties. This is basically where you throw a party and you hire a band to play and you charge admissions, and that admissions goes towards paying your rent, okay? So you get a lot of jazz artists who get their popularity from that, who get their big breaks, such as Duke Ellington. With jazz music, as well as the literature and poetry and singing, you get this platform and the Apollo Theater. This becomes a place for African Americans to go and showcase their talents. It is located in Harlem, but this was once again a place for African Americans to go play their music, sing, and read their poems. You also get places like the Lafayette Theater. This was home of Orson Welles, who produced the Voodoo Macbeth. But this was also a federal theaters project that promoted and pushed for African Americans to have their own theater. This was the first to be integrated that allowed African American actors and actresses instead of blackface. In addition to that, you get the infamous Cotton Club. This was a whites-only club in Harlem, but this was a place where whites could come and celebrate and do all those things that were in Black culture, enjoy the jazz, hang out with influential African Americans without any judgment, okay? So this was like the cool club. It did have Black or African American performers. So if you were a musician, this was the place where you wanted to perform. This was the premier nightclub that would elevate your status as an artist. But the only people who could actually attend were whites, okay? So Black performers, white audience only. This included artists like Duke Ellington and Cab Calloway, amongst the many who actually were in this club, okay? You guys, this club does eventually get shut down. It is mainly because it was run by a white gangster or a mob, and so they do eventually get shut down, okay? With the Cotton Club, you get things like the brown paper bag. Not at the Cotton Club, but other clubs starts to input that because they wanted their audience to have the lighter skin color. So if you were African American and your skin was darker than the brown paper bag, then you would not be admitted into it. If you were an artist or a performer, then it was fine for you to be able to play, but you would not be sitting in the audience, okay? You guys, brown paper bag is something that continues to go on even until today. I can remember being in college and being at a party, and they literally pulled out a brown paper bag, and that was based on how much you charged the people. So darker skinned girls, such as myself, we had to pay more to get it. All right, so despite all these advances, despite African Americans grabbing hold of their culture and celebrating and pushing for this Black excellence, in the North, they did face some racism. That was a continuing problem. And then as the music and literature got pushed even more, some of that racism subsided, depending on where they are. Some of it grew. However, Harlem Renaissance led to a huge new beginning because it actually allowed for Black culture to be exposed on a massive level. And then it also helped with political confidence. So African Americans started pushing more for that right to vote, pushing more to hold office, and getting that 15th Amendment to be successfully executed wherever they were. This was typically in the North, more so in the South, though. All right, so next time, you guys, we are going to talk about the creation and identity of Black culture, how it starts to emerge and how it starts to grow, and then leading into the Civil Rights Movement. See you guys later.